Hello, friends, and welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast, where we focus on optimizing the well-being and best practices of insurance and financial professionals today. On this show, our objective is to help you optimize your life, optimize your profession, and learn from other optimized advisors. I'm your host, Scott Heinila. We hope you enjoy the show. All right, before we go any further, though, let's do you the proper introduction. Sean Humeston. Humeston, thank you. Shoreline Financial. Oh, it is?
Yeah, either way it works.
It is, okay. Well, for me, it's Heinila, or the Finnish, which is what my name is technically Heinila.
Really?
So Scott Heinila. But we just didn't necessarily, when I say we, more like I, didn't necessarily like that.
Yeah.
I prefer.
Sounds like a disease or something.
A little bit, exactly. That's exactly right. Not if you're in Finland, though. That's what's the most interesting part. Anyways, Sean Humeston, Shoreline Financial Services of Arizona.
Yeah.
Why don't you have an interesting story of how either the business found you or you found the business. I'm always never not quite sure because I've never really met anybody who says, I want to be an insurance agent.
Right.
Unless their father or mother was in insurance and they were very successful, then that's different. Excluding that group, it's like nobody is overly pumped about, I want to be an insurance guy.
Right.
Anyways, tell me your story. I think that's important.
Yeah, so the story is I came off of my 14th national tour as a bass player in a punk rock band and realized that making money in that industry was going to be pretty tough.
Did you make money?
Yeah,
we
actually did pretty well. After our third album, we were able to get some pretty big sponsorship and, obviously make some sales off of the records. And then, then we went on tour and, made money selling merchandise. And
okay, I want to talk more about that, but we're going to have to come back to that.
Yeah, no problem. But anyways, the story was I was legitimately crying, on my mom's shoulder, like, man, I'm never going to be a rock star. It's like officially over. Half the band wanted to move to LA and, pursue their career, eating bologna off of their hand and, living in a van somewhere. So by that time I already had 2 daughters and, bought my first house in Orange County. So I was like crying to her and I said, what do I do, Mom? She goes, well, you should go talk to my neighbor. He just moved in, right? And he does retirement planning for school teachers. And I was like, that sounds terrible.
Terrible. From punk rock to selling insurance to teachers.
So she was like, so you should go talk to him. I said, do I have to wear a tie? And she's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, I've never even put one on my entire life, So anyways, I humbly walked over there and his name was Darren and he was like, yeah, man, we have an open door policy at our firm. We hire young kids with no education, no background in insurance or retirement planning for that matter. And we train you. And if you stick, you stick. If you don't, you're out. And that was it, man. I walked in there and worked for them for 7 years and then started Shoreline Financial shortly after.
What was his role in the company?
He was just another advisor.
He was another advisor. Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? In other words, I think obviously that's how you cut your teeth.
Yeah.
So was it hardcore sale?
Yeah. It was crazy hard.
Yeah. Okay.
So literally 9 months of training before you actually ever meet with your first client, right? Mm-hmm. So the organization was founded by Bob Lauder, who was, you know Bob, right? Mm-hmm. So this
I know of him, right? I know the story, yeah.
But he was a Scientologist. So L. Ron Hubbard's teachings was his MO. So 9 months of training, you had to go through all of those, crazy sessions with sitting down, doing communication courses with people and just hours and hours of stuff.
Wow.
Just
before they even put you out. Wow.
Before you're even licensed.
Yeah.
Right. Because they want you to learn how to communicate with people. And, it's like one of the craziest examples would be you and I sitting across from a table and the session was I had to basically sit there and do nothing while you just screamed and cussed at me for a half hour.
Oh my gosh.
And have strictly no emotion, right? And then that's how you would pass to the next advanced class.
Whoa.
Right? right? Whereas prior to that, you would just sit and just stare at each other. And if you,
Right.
if you smirked or laughed or, you know, blinked too many times, they would, you know, the guy would stop and be like, okay, start over.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's like military boot camp.
Yeah.
I think we might need to ratchet up our training a little bit. A little more hardcore.
Yeah, so that was for 9 months, and then all of a sudden they, you know, they give you your own leads, and then you just start.
So for
knocking on doors.
6 or so years, 6+ years, you were with them, and then you said, hey, you know, I'm ready to start my own business.
Yeah.
What year was that?
So I got licensed in 2001. I was 26, and then 6.5, 7 years later, I started Shoreline Financial.
In 08, 09.
08, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
I actually had the DBA prior to becoming a corporation, and that was probably like 9 months before. But yeah, we became LLC'd in 2009.
Okay. And so your business real angle and perspective is a little bit different than the typical traditional annuity or insurance agent. At least it was at that time when you launched Shoreline.
Yeah.
So what was the model then? Explain that for the audience. And then I'm going to say, the concluding question is, does that model still work?
Yeah.
Share some of those insights.
So back then, there were a lot of advisors that were running advertisements in the newspaper for CD products, right? So they would have this accelerated higher rate for, you know, a 6-month CD or a 1-year CD, and then you would, you know, the customer would call off of the ad in the paper and then say, hey, you know, I'd like to make an appointment, come in. And then the strategy was, once they were in the office, to kind of teach them more about short-term annuities, right? We used to call them certificate of annuities to make it sound more like a CD, a certificate of deposit, right? Of course, now we call them MIGAs, right? But nobody knows what that means,
Right.
You know,
Not unless you're in the biz. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the idea was just to advertise that, and then we shortly learned after about a year of that we could actually just advertise the actual annuity rate. Right, and we're talking short-term stuff, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year terms, and just advertise those rates, and then that just exploded. I mean, literally exploded.
So those exist, 1 year, 2 year.
Yep.
Okay. See, a lot of people who even sell annuities don't necessarily know. Certainly, so let's erase kind of the last year and a half where interest rates have significantly increased. That's opened up the market of some shorter duration products that the traditional annuity space would not have offered for many years.
Yeah.
But you were able to find a home of some of those carriers that did offer those. I mean, that's pretty abnormal. So that was a very unique or niche position that you had in the industry at a time where I don't think they were very prevalent, were they?
No, so that's the crazy thing is, like, you know, you compare a bank CD at that time, 08, 09, you know, they were probably paying somewhere around 3%, right? Whereas the annuity market for the same 1-year product was offering like 4.5.
Oh my gosh.
So you can imagine clients are, you know, you walk in like, hey, I want this 1-year CD at 3 when I can give you a 1-year annuity at 4.5. They're like, okay, makes total sense.
So at that time, when you launched the company and you're selling these 1 year, 2 year rates, let's forget the CD thing. Let's just go straight to offering these annuity rates. Did that work, advertising in the paper? And if so, what did that look like?
Yeah, so nobody was doing it back in the day.
Right.
So everybody was offering the CDs because obviously from a you know, prospect perspective or a consumer perspective, they're looking at FDIC insured, protected, guaranteed, right? So that's what was kind of luring them in. And then the idea would be to, you know, educate them on the other products that are available.
Right.
And we just thought, well, let's just advertise. They're higher rates anyways.
Right.
And nobody was doing it. And people were just calling saying, do these products really exist? Like, this is a thing?
So when it would mostly be, I guess, Sunday paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would run in the Arizona Republic. Our offices, obviously, in California would run in, like, you know, the San Diego, I believe it's the Tribune.
Yeah, or OC Register.
OC Register,
LA Times. Okay, so you were in all the major newspaper publications at that time.
Yeah.
And so then on Sunday, you're not there. Or were you? No.
No.
Yeah.
So Monday, the phone would just
light up.
Yeah. We'd have over 60 voicemails by the time we got into the office.
And how long did that, I'm going to call it that run, like that, how long did that last where it was like, this is incredible?
That was probably a solid 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. From basically 08
to 18.
18. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as you would expect, like those ads start to kind of just become, people were just like, I've seen it. Now you got competitors doing the same thing, right? We kind of paved that way to advertise the annuity products. And then other people were like, well, if they're having success, we'll do it. And then it just, of course, became a bit saturated, and we were like, we're done.
So for 10 years, you're able to, I'm going to call it gather assets, right?
Yeah.
You're getting clients in the door. They're in short duration annuities. Those annuities are obviously maturing on a pretty regular, consistent basis, 1, 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
That opens up an opportunity to either gather more assets, offer the next best rate that's available on the marketplace.
Yep.
And so, that is a very contrary way that the annuity market has historically worked. But how has it served you and your clients in their practice over the decade plus that you've been in the business?
So that was the beautiful thing about starting in this particular way, where we have this sort of revolving, maturing accounts where we always have the clients coming in after a year or two saying, hey, this money's coming due now. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And the simple math would be, well, do you want the same product, or can we look at maybe looking at something more long-term, maybe something that would provide more income for them in the future, depending on their age.
Right.
And it was just a perfect segue, and it still is to this day, to offer other products.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome, right?
Yeah, it's been great.
Does advertising in the paper still work today?
So we stopped advertising in the big papers, right?
Okay.
Because two things. It got obviously way overly saturated. It's got way more expensive, right? And we're just at the point now where like it's not worth it.
Right. The ROI is diminished down to where it's not.
Yeah, tiny little ad, like 2x4, that costs $10,000 a week. It was like,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to generate.
Yeah. So what we do now is we just go to the smaller community papers.
Okay.
So like in the Southeast Valley of Phoenix, you've got Gilbert, Chandler, Apache Junction, the East Valley. They all have their own little community papers that are free. They get delivered to the house, and the advertising cost is 1/10 of that.
Yeah.
Now, granted, those run on a monthly basis, right? So it's even more, it's cheaper because obviously the circulation is not as big.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But so we can run a bigger ad, and it's sexier, and it's got my face on it.
Right.
And then of course that ad is big enough to where we can advertise other products, estate planning products, living trusts, maybe a little sprinkle about an indexed annuity if we've got room, and
especially with rates that we finally now have.
Yeah. It's been 20 years.
Oh
man.
my gosh. It's been awesome though to finally have rates that are refreshing, really drive real return, right? Real relative return. It's a wonderful time to be in the annuity business after 12, 13 years of flatlining,
As a 23-year veteran, I'd never seen like a 3-year annuity rate as high as it had been. Basically, recently. I think June was about the peak, and then we've seen it obviously decline since then. But.
So what other marketing do you do or have done that has worked well once you've moved on, or in addition to the advertising in the paper?
In addition to mostly, we did a lot of seminars back in the day, pre-COVID.
Right, okay.
So that was...
oh, yeah, you've done a bunch of events with big events.
With Tom Hegna.
Yeah, tell me about those.
Yeah, so
what does that look like?
I met Tom back in Vegas when he was speaking for like a financial planning symposium kind of deal, and I pulled him aside after he got off stage, and I was like, man, your message is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he's like, thanks, man. And I'm like, where do you live? He's like, I live in Fountain Hills, Arizona. And I was like, oh, stop it right now. Stop it. So I just said, listen, do you ever do seminars where maybe you're not on the road and you're in town and you want to just, drive down 30 minutes and, have a conference room type of setting where where it's real small, or like do an actual community center or library, where we got 50, 60 people there. And he's like, I don't care as long as you pay me.
Right.
I don't care where
That's
I
all.
go.
That's his job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's rinse, repeat. He has that thing down to a science.
Yeah.
He just wants a room full of people and pay me my speaking fee.
So we
enough.
did that. And that was, of course, back when he was still affordable, right? Because naturally he's just beyond massive now. But we would have him just come into a community center, have 50, 60 people there. And everybody, as you guys know, like Tom is
powerful,
phenomenal, man. So he just blows these people's heads off. And then they come in the office. They're like, okay, teach me.
And so no issue with him being the talking head, the presence at the event.
Yeah.
And then pivoting to working with Shoreline.
Yeah, he does a very good job of segueing while he's, doing his spiel or his speech, right? Talking about how important it is to use a professional, and then he'd point over at me in the corner like Sean kind of deal, right?
Yeah, so he's really looping you in, integrating you into the whole process. Did everybody get a book? Like the attendees, did they get books? So
that was the deal. If you made an appointment with me, then you get the free book.
Did that hook work?
Yeah.
It did, okay.
Yeah.
How often do you think people actually read the book, really?
Quite a bit.
You did? Okay, yeah, that's fair to say
that was the dangle, right? That was the carrot. Like, hey, you make an appointment, consultation with me for an hour, and, I'll even sign it for you.
And so you did that. That's great. And you did that for a number of years, right?
Yeah,
or a handful of them?
Prior to COVID, that was kind of like our big thing. We would work with a couple of different marketing groups that would obviously send out, whether it be those flyers or postcards or the social media stuff, draw the people into the event, and then Tommy would go in there and just kill it. Okay.
What about today? What does Shoreline Financial look like today?
So today, it's kind of on cruise mode, man.
You've reached that point in life.
We've got 1,200 clients that we service now. The only downside is they're getting older, right? So as we just
attrition, you're getting some attrition.
As we naturally age, the clients are getting older, and unfortunately, we're filing a lot of death claims lately.
Well, with 1,200 clients, where are they mostly? Are they mostly concentrated in Arizona? Are they now all over the country?
I would say at least half, if not more, of our client base are snowbirds.
Okay.
Right. So they're typically going to be primary residences the Midwest, Ohio, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois kind of areas, right?
Got it.
Minnesota.
And they come
to Arizona for half the year. It's almost kind of, it's almost scary, like how they just literally come in the same week, right? Like last part
wagons,
of October.
just kind of wagons making their way west.
Yeah, if we didn't
that
live
is
in an
wild.
area,
they all know.
If we didn't live in an area where there was no sea, man, they'd just be like on a boat, like just
paddling. Yeah, that is wild.
It
how
is.
They all sync up.
Literally within that 2-week period of late October, early November, man, they're just piling in, and then they all leave at the same time. Late April, early May, it's like clockwork.
So your business must be pretty cyclical, in the sense that you probably when they're in town, that's when
it's busier.
Yeah.
Some are slower, obviously, because there's not as many people there.
Right.
But now with the future of technology and the digital world, I mean, we obviously can call and do Zooms and meet
all
with
those
people
things.
all over the country.
Yeah. Okay. Especially with digital entry systems on applications, so most of that's all being done. But I would imagine like a lot of your maturity dates happen to probably have just naturally occur in those
January to March.
Months. Right.
January to March, yeah. People always joke about like, oh, it's the, right now this is October, right? It's the CD maturing month.
Right.
Not for us.
No. It's January through March.
Yeah.
Those are your peak months.
Yeah. Yeah, because you figure by the holidays are over, people are like kind of more focused on, whatever they're focused on, and generally that could be their finances, and they're like, okay, let's meet with Sean and figure out what we're doing.
Yeah. So you got 1,200 clients. You're on cruise control.
Yeah,
Do you like that?
We're still taking on new clients, obviously.
Right.
I think we
mostly
have to.
word of mouth, introductions, personal. Oh, what about the
Tons
children?
of referral. Yeah.
Are you doing anything intentional to introduce yourself, gain relations with the second generation?
So a lot of our clients that we're still, I would say, bringing on. kind of internally or naturally would be our beneficiaries, right? So
Got it. Okay, so you
as
are
our clients
moving
are
to the
aging,
yep.
and they're passing on. We have been trying to do a program, if you will, where we reach out to the beneficiaries, obviously well before there's any kind of illness from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce ourselves if they don't know us already, and let them know about their options when these annuity accounts mature, or if they have to file a death claim. And so that has opened up a huge door where those beneficiaries are now saying, hey, you serviced my parents for 15, 20 years. I would like you to do the same thing. And then we keep that money in-house.
That's great. You have any idea of percentage that you would think that would pertain to?
Probably 20%.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to have those beneficiaries where they're like, just give me the money.
Right.
I'm taking it. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to go buy a boat.
I've got my own plans. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. But what's funny is they're getting smarter, man.
Right.
They are. This younger generation is getting really smart. And, you take, for example, an IRA account, years ago, people would just take that lump sum
Right.
from their parents, like, hey, I'm just going to
Pay the taxes.
Now, but now I would say 9 out of 10 times they're saying, hey, let's stretch this.
Yeah, which is great.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just so much more efficient.
Yeah.
And I imagine the parents have other assets too, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
they're going to have obviously the real estate options to sell those, and obviously their brokerage accounts and so forth. But
Yeah. All right, let's. Can we switch off of shop talk?
yeah,
So I want to get back to the whole musician
music thing.
career.
yeah.
So in high school, I would imagine.
No, I was 13.
Oh, you were 13.
Oh, you mean when I went on tour?
No, like when you were like, I want to be. This is it, man. I'm going to be a rock star.
So this kind of came sort of unnaturally, if you will. My stepdad was trying to gain some confidence and some clout
Right.
after he remarried my mom, and when you're 12, 13 years old, you're like, no, I'm the man of the house here.
That's right.
Right.
I don't need. You're just an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Get out of my way.
so he wanted to win me over, so he bought me my first electric guitar when I was 13.
Okay.
And of course, I was ecstatic, So I've always just dreamt of playing and
Slapping the bass, man.
slapping the bass. So
Yeah.
I literally just put in Master of Puppets,
Oh.
Metallica, and
Whoa.
just started trying to learn
Whoa.
all the riffs, man.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You went to like straight to advanced mode.
That was what we were listening to, man.
Of course. Well, I guess you wouldn't know any better, but that's like that's a question I'm asking you. That must be one of the hardest riffs.
Well,
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, Kurt Hammond's like a god.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that, by the way.
but I didn't want to really get into something that I
What's interesting,
wasn't
you never see him in any top 10.
as a guitar player.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Maybe
know.
back in the day, back in the late '80s, early '90s, he was
Yeah,
all
but
over the
but
magazines.
Like Robert Plant and all these guys. Okay, I understand all of that. That's great and good.
Yeah.
But he's never not on the list,
Right.
I mean, if you're really good and talented, why aren't you just really good and talented and honored in your right as one of the best guitar players of all time?
Exactly. I don't know.
I'm not an expert, so I don't know, but I just hear it and I look at it, I'm like, that guy shreds.
He does. Yeah. So then at that point, probably about a year into me just sitting in my room practicing for hours, just cassette tape, flipping the thing over. Right?
And just listening. And
yeah, I used to record it.
Wow.
Right. And then my stepdad brings in like all these, this was kind of right when CDs were like becoming a deal. So, like 38 Special and the Colt and the Cure,
yeah.
and he's like, you got to start learning some of this stuff,
Yeah.
He was a big like
Sonic Temple. Right?
Yeah, he was big into like Boston and Journey and Styx and all that stuff. He's like, these if you're ever gonna sing, this is what you gotta learn.
Right.
And I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to this stuff.
It's not Master of Puppets.
But it grew on me.
Yeah.
It grew on me. And then
it's good music. Good music is good music, especially
Yeah.
rock and roll.
so I kept just playing from all through high school, and then the story is I was actually in, what is it? It's called Bushnell, Illinois, which is like right next to Macomb. There's that university there. It's right in the center of the state, right? Nothing around, but they have this huge festival every year, kind of like a Woodstock type. And they have, hundreds of bands, all these different stages, and they try to bring in, a pretty decent acts. Like back in the 90s, I remember MC Hammer came there.
Oh my gosh.
Right, which is really not their vibe because it was more like kind of punk rock and roll type of stuff.
But he was the top.
But he was big, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of that same setup. All these different tents, different bands, right? And then, of course, they had that big main stage that was just naturally built into this beautiful hill.
That's cool.
Similar to what I'm seeing out here, got the ponds and the lakes and stuff. But I met a group there that had just got signed to a record label up in Seattle called Tooth and Nail. And they just cut their first album. The band was called Value Pack.
Okay.
And I remember pulling them aside going, this band name is awful. And they're like, well, we didn't have a lot of options, So
wow.
Come to find out, while I was there that week, the bass player was going to quit. And they were like, hey, when we get back to Orange County, we'd love to just, have you try out.
Wow.
And I was, it's ecstatic, man.
Of course.
Like,
but you didn't play bass.
So I actually did. During the time of me kind of growing up with the electric guitar, I started to switch more to acoustic.
Got it.
And then my neighbor, my best friend, Matt, he was like, hey, I'm picking up the bass and going to learn how to play that.
Right.
He was like, yeah, we should start learning bass together. So I'll buy the amp, you buy the guitar, and we'll just kind of hang out. We lived right next to each other. So, that's what we did. We just started learning bass licks and
just jamming together.
Bands like Primus.
Like heavy bass.
Just bass central.
Yeah.
So then I really didn't play it as a, when you're playing guitar, you can play guitar and sing and be a one-man band in your bedroom.
Right.
But a bass, you can't really, it's just it's not an instrument that really works for that. So yeah, these guys came back to Orange County and they're like, why don't you try out? And I was like, well, I'm not a very good bass player, and they're like, it's cool, man. We really like your stage presence. I think you'd really have a good fit. And then they hired me.
That's great. Wow. Okay. So you had 14 tours.
14 national tours.
So what does that mean? How long does a tour last?
So it depended. In the early years, 90, 96, 97, 98, we would go out for 2 months, right? So it'd be either like the summer tour, the fall tour, unfortunately, sometimes the winter tour. Sometimes 6 weeks, right? If we're doing like more of a West Coast, if we, head up Cali, hit, Oregon, Washington, come down through Colorado and then back, that could only be maybe 3 weeks. But my longest one was little over 8 weeks, and it was probably one of the best tours I ever had, man. It was my very first,
Oh, wow.
It was.
So who did you open for? Like, who were some of the best bands that you opened for?
Yeah, so
tell me a couple
right
stories
here in Dallas, man. We got to open up for No Doubt,
No way.
Stone Temple Pilots,
Wow.
Third Eye Blind.
What about some punk rock bands? What about good punk rock bands?
So the best experience I had was touring with MXPX.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah.
They had that big hit back in the 90s that was playing on K-Rock, right? So, they had a tour. That was my very first one in 96, and that was just when they were getting huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while on tour, within those 14 years, last question, we can wrap up. Tell me a high and tell me a low. Excluding when you were crying on your mom's shoulder of like, this is over. That's out.
Just
you can't
the tour
talk about
part.
that. Yeah. Just out on the road, doing your thing. Like, give me a high story and give me a low.
The high story would be Bartlesville, Oklahoma, right outside of Tulsa.
Okay.
Right.
Tulsa, I hear, is a great town.
Yeah.
Cool little town.
Yeah.
Great foodie.
They had this similar setup, Scott. It was basically like a warehouse, right? And they built this stage up super high, like 10 feet high. So the kids are just like literally,
looking
their necks
up.
are hurting, right? And in middle of summer, just packed in this warehouse, thousands of kids, man. I mean,
Oh
just
my
no
gosh.
wiggle room, and we're just up on that stage rocking, man. It was insane.
That's so cool.
And we went back to that venue several years,
Okay.
and always just loved it. And it was hot, sticky.
Yeah.
You know?
Inside, probably no air.
No
right?
air, man. It was a warehouse, man. It was
Yeah.
insane, but we just had a blast.
Hammered down.
It was one of the best experiences I remember. And then, of course, some of the Orange County shows where we were from, just drew a huge crowd, right? So there used to be, maybe you remember the Nile Theater, was it? No, that's in Mesa. There was a theater that they actually converted where they ripped all the seats out. It was in Orange. It was a huge venue. I'm trying to remember the name, but that was
the only ones I know of, the one in Costa Mesa, back behind Home Depot, is like
yeah.
Well, now I think it's called the Observatory.
Yeah.
That one, and then Stage. Is it Stagecoach? That's down in San Juan Capistrano.
Yeah.
Those kinds of music.
Yeah, we used to
theaters.
play all those, man.
Yeah. Wow, that's
So
great.
that was always fun. The low would be just the constant fighting within the band, man. We'd be on tour again in Texas somewhere, say heading to Arlington or something from LA, and AC goes out in the van, and it's 150,000 degrees,
grumpy.
right? And everybody's just hot, sticky, and pissed, and and then we used to fight, man. It was just a fight like crazy.
Oh my God.
The singer and the drummer, man, were the worst because they were like best buddies growing up in high school.
Right.
So like they didn't understand how to not do that.
Right.
And of course I was the elder, right? I was like 3 years older than these guys. So, I'm trying to be dad.
Right.
And it was awful, man.
Just tears you apart.
Yeah. I mean, we'd be at,
Well, it breaks you down emotionally. You're just like, I just can't take
why
this
am I
anymore.
doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be at a hotel room, man, and they're just blasting at each other, screaming, and we're like, dude, take it down.
Yeah. That's the inner workings of a band, right? Like, the exterior part, what everybody gets to see on the outside,
Yeah.
the music and the party time and the product, all that's great. Inside closed doors,
Yeah.
it could be pretty tumultuous.
It was awful. I
Yeah.
mean, but then there were just those amazing highs where everybody's just coming off of that stage and just going, man, this is why we do this. You know, this is why we suffer with no AC and all crowded up in this van with, 2 other roadie guys too,
Yeah. So live shows today. You love still going to live shows as a fan?
Yeah.
Who are some of your current favorites? Just a few. And
So ironically, my wife and I just went to see Leon Bridges down in San Diego at the Ratty Shell Harbor venue. And ironically, he's from here.
Oh, wow.
And his entire new album is all about stuff going down in his childhood here in Fort Worth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Leon Bridges.
Yeah. So this morning we listened to the album as we were getting ready to come over, and
Good.
some of the lyrics,
like
man,
it?
it's like talking about like the Trinity River and Rosedale, and I was like, this is awesome, man.
Yeah.
We're in his
You're
town
in it.
now.
Yeah, you are.
But the show was absolutely phenomenal, man. That guy's stage presence is insane.
Okay, got to go see him.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's kind of, I don't know are you familiar with him?
No.
Kind of R&B, soul, like he's kind of almost like he just jumped out of the 60s.
Okay.
And he's an artist today, but
I'm gonna check
obviously
it out.
he's got such a different genre of music, right? He can do blues, country, R&B, rock, and the voice is just sexy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for coming in.
I appreciate you having me.
Hey, I look forward to seeing your podcast.
I hope so. I'm going to need a lot of help doing it, but
it's good content. We're happy to help, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. This is a great setup.
It is fun. You'd be good. Yeah, it is great. Cheers. Till next time.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment or review. Be sure to check us out on social media at Optimized Advisor Podcast. Till next time.